virtually every person that I have met who has Asperger syndrome or high functioning autism is faced with this challenge. And that challenge is that when they were young, particularly when they were like in elementary school or high school, they were disrespected. Often they were bullied. Now, a lot of people with Asperger syndrome tell me that the worst years of their life were those 4 years when they were in high school because they were just rejected. They were set aside, pushed aside. I mean, sometimes physically bullied, but they were left out, and they felt horrible. They were not only disrespected by others, but here's the key point. They learned, and let's emphasize the word learned, they learned to disrespect themselves because it was during those years that they created this internal identity. So who am I? This is the question that most teenagers ask themselves. I mean, who am I and who am I going to be for the rest of my life? And the person with Asperger syndrome, high functioning autism, often draws the conclusion that the person that I'm going to be is a person who is not to be respected. And so I'm not going to respect myself. Now, I got to tell you, when I was in high school, I did not have a lot of problem with physical bullying. I don't know why, I just didn't. But most people with Asperger syndrome tell me, yeah, those were the worst 4 years of their lives. So the first thing that we need to learn is to overcome this deficit. And that deficit is to disrespect ourselves. And so what do? Well, we learn to respect ourselves. Well, how do we do that? We're going to dig into that a little bit further in just a moment. All right, number 2 is this. It is to create a template, or let's call it a precedent, in which we respect others. Now, why are we doing this? Well, besides the fact that it's just the decent thing to do, because when we set that precedent of respecting other people, that we're going to treat other people the way that they should be treated and the way that they should be treating us, is we are demonstrating by our lifestyle that this is our perception of the correct way to interact with other individuals. So we're establishing a precedent which says this is the way that we expect to be treated. This is the template. This is the way that it is to be done. So I respect you, you respect me. That is the social contract that we have with virtually everybody. And of course, not everybody's going to sign on to the contract. Those people need to be dealt with. Number 3 is value yourself. How is that different from respecting yourself? All right, now here's where we dig into the how-to. We talk about this in other videos, but I want you to take just a moment and enumerate all the things that are correct about you. Why would we do that? Well, remember those high school years, those elementary school years, when the other kids were telling you what your flaws are? Why did they do that? Well, by pushing you down, they elevated themselves in their distorted way of thinking, but all of those negatives added up, and that became our self-perception. But that's not accurate, is it? No, of course not. So to come up with an accurate valuation of ourselves, we need to ask ourselves the question, well, what is my worth? Now, I'm not talking about finances. I mean, you can include that if you want, but I'm not talking about creating a balance sheet of our finances. You know, what are our assets, what are our debts, and let's see what we're worth when we subtract one from the other. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about our value as a person. I mean, what are your abilities? If you were to take time, and you remember we talked about this in another video, but if you were to take time and take out a sheet of paper, maybe do it on your computer, and literally list all the things that you can do, you'd be there all day, maybe several days, maybe it could take you weeks or months. I don't know, because there are things you could do that you don't even think about. For example, you can thinking about. That's something you can do. All right, number 1 on your list, I can think. Number 2 on your list, I can see. Okay, maybe you're blind, but tiny minority are, but if that's not one of your abilities, leave it off the list. But if you can see, put it on the list. I can see, I can hear. So I can think, I can hear, I can see, I can breathe, my heart is beating, I have generally good health, and you just go on and on. I can talk, I have all these abilities, I can write. You may be talented, you may be an athlete. I'm not, but maybe you're an athlete. I'm not going to put that on my list, but you can put it on your list if you are. Maybe you have Artistic skills, okay, I'm a bit of an artist. Put that on your list. Maybe you are not only artistic, but maybe you are a musician, or you just like music. So you can put down, I'm a musician, or I like music. That's a plus. That's a positive. And you see, you just go on and on with these things. Maybe you are a decent human being. Put that on the list. You're honest. Put that on the list. You respect other people. That's part of your list. I mean, literally thousands of things about you that are positive. Now, I know when I say this, people say, come on, Ken, you're sounding a little bit arrogant, teaching people to be high-minded and haughty. No, that's not the point at all. We're teaching people to balance the sheet. What I'm teaching people is to look at both sides and just come up with an accurate self-perception. Not positive thinking, not negative thinking, accurate thinking. So you can add the negatives. So make two lists. First thing on my list, my negative list, I want to say, okay, I'm not an athlete. You know, I can run, I can walk, I can jump if I have to. Don't know why I'd want to, but I could. I mean, I can do physical things. But, okay, I'm going to put that on my list. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a genius. I'm not a multi-billionaire. You know, I could think of a lot of things I could put in my deficit column. But I really don't need to do a lot because, you know, again, during those early years of my life, formative years of my life, formative years of your life, that deficit list was made out for you by everybody else. Now stop and think about it. When you were growing up, elementary, high school, how many people came up to you and said, you know what I like about you? I mean, did anyone tease you because you were so smart? Maybe if you have Asperger syndrome. That's a real possibility. But by and large, they tried to point out deficits. And even if it was an asset, like being intelligent, they would try to take that asset and turn it into a deficit. Make it sound like it's something bad. This kid, he thinks, you know, he's a nerd. You know, they use terms like that. Now, what they mean is you're smarter than we are. They're trying to take it and turn it backwards. What we're doing with this exercise, value yourself, is to take all that and calibrate it accurately so that you know who you truly are. Number 4 is this. Tolerate, or I should say one of the deficits we have is tolerating disrespect. So the way to turn that around is just don't tolerate it. Disrespect is something that you say, I will not allow in my life. Just not going to allow it. Now, does that mean that people are going to stop disrespecting you? No. What it means is we're going to stop accepting their opinion. Someone disrespects us. Some people disrespect everybody. I mean, they'll cut in line. They don't care who it is. They don't care if you have Asperger's. They don't care if you're a man or a woman. They don't care. They just jerks, and that's the way they live. They disrespect everyone. Well, you can't run around punching all those people in the nose, can you? But what you can do, listen, this is important. What you can do is you cannot internalize that disrespect. You can say, I am a person who is to be respectable, who is to be respected by virtue of the fact that I'm a person. And so I'm going to respect others the same way. Number 4 is disengage with those who actually work against you. And there are people like that. So you're an adult, you go to work, you have Asperger syndrome, you're going to find it tough. I know there are people with Asperger's who have jobs. When I was young, in my 20s, even into my early 30s, I found that holding down a job was next to impossible because you just didn't click. You know, you had that blind spot in your brain, mind blindness, they call it, and you just couldn't get along with other people. I mean, you got along, but they just didn't, there was something missing there. So it was tough to do a job, even though you could do it, even though you're probably better at it than everybody else. There's another element to working a job, being employed, and that is that social contract that you have with others that doesn't even exist for a person with Asperger's syndrome. So you find yourself in this place where there are those who are working against you. Sometimes literally. I mean, if we're talking about a workplace, they're literally working against you. And I've had that experience many times where people just didn't want to be, they just didn't want me there. They worked against me for no good reason. They just didn't like me, you know? What you do with those people, my opinion, here's how you deal with that deficit. Just disengage with them. I mean, disregard their opinions. If possible, I don't talk with those people, period. There are some individuals in my life, I don't work with them. I'm not related to them. There's no connection whatsoever. Well, you know what I do? I just totally, completely disengage with those people. Don't talk to them as far as I'm concerned. They may as well be invisible. So the principle is that we understand that we have those who disrespect us, and there are those who are not only disrespecting us, but working actively against us. And when we can, when possible, we just totally, completely disengage with those people. Why would you not do that? If this person is not going to like us, not going to help us, have no positive impact on our lives whatsoever, why bother with them? You know, why bother with them? Number 6 is, and I think this one is very important, number 6 is identify your space. As a person with Asperger syndrome, and this is the same advice I give to people when I'm talking about dealing with narcissists and narcissism. But as a person with Asperger syndrome, you need to have a space that is your own. Now, I'm not talking about a physical space, but we can use that as an analogy. For example, I live in a house. That's my space. That belongs to me and my wife. And there's some people who come and go whenever they want, like my family, immediate family. You know, my kids, my grandkids, they come and go, but the neighbor's cat, no. Sorry, neighbor's cat, you cannot come and go whenever you want. So the neighbor's cat is welcome to wander around my front yard, my backyard, and while you're out there wandering around, see if you can find a mole or a groundhog or something and kick him out. Would you do that, please? But when you come up to my door and start to meow as loud, you know, these cats, I mean, you'd be surprised how loud they can be, especially at night. You would think the poor cat kitty was starving to death, but no, you got a house down the street, you go back home. But they can be really loud. They want to come inside my house. No, that's my space. You stay out of it. So as a person with Asperger syndrome, really, just as a person, doesn't matter if you have Asperger's or not, just people with autism tend to miss this. You are entitled to your own space. This is your space, not a physical space. But you have a space in which you can feel safe as far as your dignity, as far as your confidence, as far as your self-respect, and where you insist on the respect of others. You know, somebody can't just come into my house and light up a cigarette. Sorry, can't do it. You got to respect my space. You can't come into my house and drink a beer or whatever. You know, we don't do that in our house. Do it in your house, but we have house rules, right? And that's what you should have too. But now we're talking about your life, not a physical house. So you should have life rules. You should have space rules, house rules for your life. What are people allowed to do, not allowed to do? Now, some people are going to try to do it anyhow, but you need to understand those people are not to be accepted in your life as far as you're concerned. So identify your space. Now you're setting up a fortress, a mental fortress, not a prison that you are stuck in, not a personal prison, but a fortress to defend who you are. That takes us to number 7, and this is also kind of important. Number 7 is just simply move on, because there are some people who are not going to respect you. They're not going to like you. It doesn't matter what you do. You can bend over backwards to help these people, and the more you help them, the more they disrespect you. Why do they do that? Why do they do that, rather? Because they're just, what do we call these people? I call them jerks. Because, well, you know, I guess you could call them more graphic terms, but let's go with jerks for now. And, you know, I got better things to do with my life than focus on people who are jerks, people who want to make my life miserable. Why would I bother with these people? Unless I absolutely, positively have to get them out of my mind, get them out of my sight, because quite frankly, you deserve better. I deserve better. Not just you and I, but everyone deserves better than to be emotionally or even physically abused by, what did we call them again? Jerks. We deserve better. So we have this deficit as people with Asperger syndrome, where we don't understand that, if this guy's a jerk, just move on, get away from him. It's not that we just disengage with them, but we just leave them totally. Now, it could be a family member, it could be somebody you work with, then you could disengage, but it's kind of hard to move away from those people. Sometimes you can't, usually you cannot. No point quitting your job to get away from jerks, because the next job you go to, guess what? There are more jerks at the next job, and they could be worse. So, this isn't something you quit your job over. But when possible, you just move away, because nobody deserves to be disrespected. Nobody deserves to be devalued. Nobody deserves to be abused. Disrespect is something that doesn't belong in your space. So you take your space and you just move on. Get away from these people. Leave them wherever they are. Get on with your life. Put them out of your mind best you can. See those two rectangles on the screen? If you want to keep talking, let's do it. All you got to do is click on one of those rectangles and we'll keep the conversation flowing. If not, well, thanks for stopping by, and we will see you all next time.